All right, let's talk about robots. We're getting really good at teaching them things, but there's always this one big question. How do you take a robot that's just okay and turn it into one that's genuinely great? Today, we're going to look at a brand new way for robots to fine-tune their own skills without us having to hold their hand the whole time. Let's dive in.
So, picture this. You've taught your robot how to do something, maybe pick up a cup. And it's pretty good, but it's not perfect. Every now and then it messes up. How do you close that gap between good enough and flawless? Especially when you put it in a new kitchen it's never seen before. That's really the heart of the problem we're unpacking today.
So here's our game plan. We'll start with why robots struggle to get things perfect. We'll call that the imperfect apprentice. Then we'll look at the two old, clunky ways of trying to fix this. After that, we get to the cool part, the noise in the machine, which leads us to this new idea called DSRL. We'll check out the test results, and then we'll talk about what this means for, the future of everything.
Okay, first up, the imperfect apprentice. This is all about what researchers call the last mile problem in robotics. It's that final, super frustrating stretch to get a robot from being kind of competent to being someone or something you can actually rely on.
You see, the most popular way to teach a robot is a technique called behavioral cloning, and it's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. A human does a task, the robot watches, and it tries to copy or clone that exact behavior. It's a fantastic way to get started.
But, and this is a big but, that first attempt is almost never perfect. The real world is just messy, right? It's unpredictable. So the second that robot faces a slightly new situation, what the paper calls an open world setting, that perfectly copied plan can suddenly fall apart.
So, if the robot isn't quite there yet, how do we fix it? Well, let's jump into our next section and look at how this has been done in the past, using two very old and honestly very slow tools.
For the longest time, you basically had two choices, and neither was great. Option 1, just go and record tons more human demos. Sure, it works, but it's crazy expensive and takes forever. Option 2, you can use traditional reinforcement learning, or RL, and just let the robot figure it out by trial and error. The problem there? It needs a mind-boggling number of tries. It's just not efficient for the real world.
So yeah, not ideal. But what if there was a hidden shortcut? This brings us to a really clever insight, something we can think of as finding the useful noise in the machine, or a better recipe for action. This whole new idea is built on a state-of-the-art method called a diffusion policy. Now, instead of learning just one super rigid way to do something, a diffusion policy learns a flexible recipe. It gets the general idea of the action, but it leaves some room to improvise.
And that's the absolute secret sauce right there. The recipe has this built-in space for tiny creative adjustments. The researchers call it the latent noise space. A good way to think about it is like a pro athlete. They have their basic move, their policy, but it's the tiny, almost invisible adjustments they make on the fly, the noise, that makes them truly great. It's a space of possibilities.
Which leads to this brilliant little learning loop. You start with the expert recipe you got from the human. Then you add a pinch of spice. That's a tiny random tweak from that noise space. Then you do a taste test. Did that little change make things better? Did you get a reward? And over time, the robot learns which little spices, which tiny variations, consistently make the recipe taste better.
And all of that brings us to the star of today's show, the formal name for this new method. Let's introduce DSRL, which stands for Diffusion Steering via Reinforcement Learning.
So what is DSRL, really? It's basically that super smart taste tester we were just talking about. It uses reinforcement learning, but not to learn the whole skill from scratch. No, it uses it to very, very quickly figure out which of those tiny variations from the noise space give the best results. It's an incredible idea for anything that needs that extra bit of precision.
And hey, don't just take my word for it. This is straight from the research paper. The authors call it Enabling Fast Autonomous Adaptation via Efficient Real-World RL. The key words there are fast, autonomous, and efficient. The robot gets better on its own, and it does it without wasting a ton of time. Now, here's what makes this so elegant, so beautiful. DSRL doesn't go in and mess with the robot's original training. It doesn't touch the base policy's weights at all. It just learns how to steer it by picking the right noise to add. That's why it's so light and so incredibly fast. Okay, the idea sounds amazing in theory. It's smart, it's efficient, but does it actually work? Let's get to the results and see how DSRL actually performs when the rubber meets the road.
The single biggest headline from the paper is this: DSRL is highly sample efficient. And what that means in plain English is that it learns a ton from just a few real-world tries.
And you can really see it on this chart. The improvement it gets per attempt is just massive. It's not a slow, steady climb like you see with the other methods. DSLR makes these huge leaps in performance right away. That's what makes it a real game changer.
So, let's just quickly recap the big wins here. First, it's super sample efficient, so it learns fast. Second, it lets the robot improve on its own in the real world. Third, it only needs black box access, meaning it doesn't even need to know how the original programming works. And finally, like we said, it leaves that base programming completely untouched.
So let's zoom out. We've seen how it works. We've seen that it works. What does this all actually mean for the bigger picture? What's the future of robot learning look like now?
Well, this isn't just some small, incremental improvement. This feels like a major step towards a future where robots aren't just tools we program, but are dynamic learners that can actually adapt to the world around them and perfect their skills all by themselves.
And that's really the big takeaway here. We're shifting away from a world where a robot getting better always requires more work from a human. Now robots can start to take the lead, improving on their own, and doing it faster and more efficiently than we ever thought was possible.
So I'll leave you with this question to think about. If a robot can learn to truly perfect any skill we teach it, what new doors does that open? What problems could we solve that seem impossible today? That is the future that this kind of research is building, and it's going to be exciting to watch. Thanks for joining me.